Greetings, everyone. My name is Caleb Saucer, and I am excited today to be joined by my friend, Brother L.J. Harry. Now, many of you are probably familiar with Brother Harry. He has served in just about every position you can imagine. Right now, he serves as the Director of Curriculum for the Pentecostal Resources Group, but he has been pastor, youth president, police chaplain, and he's an all-around nice guy. So grateful today to have this conversation with you, where we're going to be talking about your newest book called Blessed Are. Now, some of you will be familiar with his previous titles, 10 Words, which was a practical look at the 10 Commandments. And then he also wrote a devotional called Simplify that has been a bestseller. Many people have used that in their daily devotion.
Yeah, my heart is touched.
It's great. It's been a great book that's impacted a lot of people. But this is kind of on the heels of 10 Words, follows the same type of approach, but it is called Blessed Are, and it's a practical look at the Beatitudes. So we want to take a few moments, have a conversation. Brother Harry, we want you to kind of take us behind the scenes into what the process was like in writing this book. But maybe a good place to start is just why. Why this topic? Why now? What made you give a portion of your life to write this book, Blessed Are?
Days I will never get back.
There you go.
I was studying to teach and preach on the Beatitudes in Mount Vernon whilst I was pastoring. And I reached out to PPH because I wanted to get a resource from PPH. But my understanding was there was not one at the time. Not one that was focused, laser focused on the Beatitudes. Obviously there were great resources like the Apostolic Handbook series and the Gospels, but I didn't have one.
Available at PentecostalPublishing.com.
That's exactly right. Also, I believe on Audible.
There you go.
There you go. But there wasn't one of the Beatitudes. So I asked if there would be a market for it. They said yes. I said okay, which is the same way 10 Words was birthed. I was studying the 10 Commandments. There wasn't a resource developed for that alone. So that's where it all started. I figured if I'm going to research and read about it, perhaps I could write about it and hopefully provide a resource from a oneness, apostolic, spirit-filled, spirit-led perspective.
I love that. I love that. There's so much great content here, but there's one thing I find interesting. Right from the cover, there is this picture of a ladder. And then as you read through the introduction, and then you read throughout Scripture, you seem to come back to this imagery of a ladder. So what is that all about? If somebody's picking this book up, it looks different than 10 Words. But we see this imagery. Why a ladder?
Okay. So
feel free. Here,
may I
take my copy?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I don't want to leave the prop copy.
Yeah, this looks good.
So the ladder, when I was studying the Beatitudes, I thought, coming into that, I thought the Beatitudes were just this grocery list that Jesus gave the disciples. So, hey, when you're in the store, pick up some purity and some peace, and if you can find mercy on sale, throw that in the cart. But it's not. It's actually this progression. All of us start right here at the bottom at poor in spirit. Everybody, no matter who we are or aren't, start here. We have nothing to offer God He didn't already give us. So basically we turn out our pockets, and I mean, I don't even have lint. I'm that poor. But as we continue to climb that ladder and get closer to God, we could go all the way to the top where we could be persecuted for His name's sake and rejoice about it. So there's this progression and growth. Now, I must say, unintended consequence of design, because we were trying to make it look like 10 Words. And with this understanding that there's this ladder, there's progression as you go through the Beatitudes, one leads to the next. But who's at the top? Not Jesus.
L.J. Harry.
L.J. Harry.
L.J. Harry.
So if you climb
the ladder, you can one day be like L.J. Harry.
Just like me. So that's not the intention, but that's the way it's designed. But yeah, that is the whole concept of this ladder, climbing closer to God by going through these Beatitudes.
Through the process.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, you hold on to that because you may want to reference it again.
Thank you.
But this may be a tough question because I can assume as you've studied these out, they've all come to mean something to you.
They're like my family.
They've got to feel like your children
like my 8 tiny reindeer that I protect.
So my question would be, through the course of your study, is there a favorite? Is there a beatitude that just jumped out to you and you're like, you know what, this is the one?
Well, each one is very unique. And each one, I shared a story from my life, or probably from my life, on each one that was interesting at the time. I think the one that I'm most interested in, though, is blessed are the merciful, because in their context and in their day, mercy was considered to be weakness. Mercy was in the bargain bin. If you would go into this store, you'd find it somewhere in the clearance rack. But Jesus said, I'll tell you how merciful I am and how I value mercy. If if you forgive somebody 70 times 7,
Sure.
you're doing okay.
Sure.
And Peter says, how about, let's see, we're 3 strikes. Yeah, we're 3 strikes you're out, land. So Jesus is more merciful than most. Let's do this. Let's multiply by 2. Let's add 1 for good measure.
Yep.
If I forgive them 7 times, is that enough?
That's a good number. You like the number 7.
Yeah, 7's a beautiful number. And Jesus says, I'll tell you how I like mercy. 70 times 7.
Sure.
So that was really interesting to me, both not only that God has been merciful to us, but in order for us to really value that, we have to be merciful to others.
Okay. Well, if picking a favorite is a tough question, let me spin it just a little bit, because obviously you said this came out of a time where you were just studying the Beatitudes. I'm assuming you were probably teaching them in your church.
I was indeed.
So going through, was there any particular nugget that came out in your course of study where it's kind of this light bulb moment, maybe something you'd never seen before, or something that meant something to you in a way that it never had previously?
Yes, it came to me. Now, it could be because the air was very thin up there. So while I was teaching and preaching this in Mount Vernon, I was climbing a ladder.
Okay.
So each Sunday I would stand, not the entire message.
You're not Jimmy Tony.
I don't have that much kind of stamina.
Yeah.
But at some point during that message, I would go over to the ladder and I would remind our church that we're climbing this. This is a progression.
Sure.
Last week we were poor in spirit. Now we've come to the place where we mourn over our sin. Then we get to the place where we're meek because we realize, man, I got nothing to brag about, so I have nothing to be proud of. Then we keep going up. So it's easy on an 8-foot ladder when you're 2 rungs, 3 rungs, 4 rungs up. When you're 6 rungs up on an 8-foot ladder and you're 6 feet 2.
Little unstable.
My poor mother sitting on that second row going, oh, my son, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof.
This is how it ends.
This is how it ends. Yeah. I'm going to miss that guy. Well, when I got up to this 6th rung, 7th rung, pure in heart peacemakers, the more I studied about pure in heart and peacemakers, the more I realized there is this amazing conjoined relationship between the two.
Okay.
Our world is screaming for peace, but they don't want purity. But according to Scripture, if you find out peace and purity hang out together all the time, they're best friends. The only way to have purity or peace is to have purity. That peace is not the absence of fighting, it's the presence of purity or the presence of righteousness. And there's this, it's all throughout Scripture together. You'll find peace and righteousness, peace and righteousness, peace and righteousness together. That was the most interesting tidbit to me, that those two are so closely related.
Is that something you write about in the book?
It is.
Okay.
I wrote about that peace, while our world would say, if you guys would just stop fighting, we really should say, if we would start living righteously, we would automatically
It takes care of the rest.
Peace.
Yeah,
It's
I love that.
Automatic fruit of purity.
I love that. Throughout this conversation, you've probably seen a couple of the tidbits you can expect to find in the book, Blessed Are. But, Brother Harry, as we move to close out this discussion,
musicians are on their way.
They're coming up to the platform at this point in time and playing softly in the background. Just looking at the audience, maybe somebody that's on the fence about purchasing this book.
Oh, sure.
What is it that you hope somebody gleans if they make the investment, they take the time to read your work, read your writing? What do you hope that they get from their engagement with Blessed Are?
I hope they get that discipleship really is climbing this ladder. Jesus made it very clear on the side of a mountain, Matthew 5, that if you will start at poor in spirit, I have nothing to offer God He didn't already give me. Turn out my pockets, I'm poor. And then just keep climbing this ladder, chapter by chapter, principle by principle, beatitude by beatitude, you can find out that living for God really is the most blessed life we can possibly have. And by living that life, we get closer to Him and, as a result, closer to each other.
Love it.
So I hope that's what you would get out of this book.
Awesome. Well, if this has piqued your interest, if you haven't yet gotten your copy of Blessed Are, you can do so at pentecostalpublishing.com, as well as the many other resources that Brother Harry has written. But we hope that you will get your copy, and we trust that you will be blessed, no pun intended, by reading this book. So visit pentecostalpublishing.com today to grab your copy of Blessed Are. God bless you all in Jesus' name.